The first thing we do at the beginning of the day is we say 2 pledges. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together, and then we say our school pledge. And actually this year, because they're in their own classes, a lot of these opening ceremonies are being led by students where they'll stand up and lead their classmates in these pledges. And that's a big thing, to be able to stand up in front of your peers, or for someone like Rowan, who's a 5th grader, to stand up in front of a room full of people he's never met and do that. So that's something we do really want to encourage, and we'll continue to do that as a school. I will learn the true, I will do the good, I will love the beautiful. We feel very importantly as a school that we need to be intentional with everything that we do. This pledge is a summation of what we want our students to be, and what we want them to do, and how we want their affections to be. That we want them to learn what is true, we want them to act and do according to what is good, and we want them to love, that's that affection part, what is beautiful. And all of the things that we do as a school fit in nicely with a mission and vision statement. I'm going to read some of those for you today. Now, every school has a mission and vision statement. Not every school runs everything they do through the lens of that mission and vision. I'll just say that. There are schools that are pretty honest about that. We need to have a mission and vision statement, so we have them. But what we do with this at our school is that when we make a decision, whether it's the curriculum we're providing for your kids, whether it's how we discipline your students, even when we choose a mascot, which hopefully we'll be able to announce here soon. All of these things, sometimes they don't seem important, but everything we do, we want to make sure it goes through the lens of this mission and vision. So I'm going to take some time to read this with you and point out a couple things. So, the mission statement of Ascent Classical Academy is Ascent Classical Academy trains the minds and improves the hearts of young people through a classical, content-rich education in the liberal arts and sciences, with the instruction in the principles of moral character, civic virtue, in an orderly and disciplined environment. And then the vision statement. Ascent Classical Academy develops the moral and intellectual skills, habits, and virtues upon which independent, responsible, and joyful lives are built, in the firm belief that such lives are the basis for a free and flourishing republic. So when we say that everything we do goes through this lens, we have to be very careful about that then, because I'm telling you that publicly. And then if you sign your kids up here and you send them here, and then you ask me a question, how does this fit our mission and vision, and I can't answer that question, I'm in trouble, right? So I'm telling you publicly, we do everything as much as we possibly can. If we miss something, we want our parents to point us out because we want to fix it. But that intentionality is important. It's wrapped around certain things. And the thing that makes us really unique as a school is we are a classical school. Now, what does that mean? That's a big statement, and it comes with a lot of things. We'll talk about some of those tonight. But the main thing is that we don't view school as a way for us to help your kids get into only college and to only get a job. And I use that word only purposefully. Those are good things. College is great. Your career is great. Those are important things. But if all we do is prepare your kids for vocation, we're doing far too little for them. Our goal is to train up good human beings with good character, who are virtuous, who are thoughtful, and ultimately, that term liberal arts we'll talk about a little bit later, is we want them to live lives that are free. And we can talk a lot about that. If you want some questions, we can talk about it later, but that is a very important thing, especially in a society that deems to be a free society. The individuals first have to be free before the society can be. So we'll talk about that a little more later. So what are we doing with the classical school? Again, the idea is that we are fostering happiness of your students. But we don't hold to the modern view of happiness that we're just chasing after pleasure constantly, and whatever's easiest and most pleasurable, that must bring me happiness. We actually go back to the classical view of happiness, in that if you are to live a good and happy life, you must be virtuous. And that virtue can come through the practice and learning of your ability of reason, which is the highest human faculty. And again, we could talk about that for a long time, but how do we do this? What does this look like practically? We try to give your students the habits and skills necessary to pursue the answering of questions that humankind has been asking and answering since the existence of recorded history. What am I doing here? What does it mean to live a good life? How do I find happiness or meaning or purpose? And we challenge our students with those questions and try to help them seek them on their own. But we don't tell them what to think on that. We teach them how to think, and then encourage them to pursue those things on their own. The other thing is there's a lot of classical schools out there, so what makes us different than another classical school in town or in the state of Colorado? One of the things that's unique to Ascent is we have an emphasis on the virtue of wonder. We have 7 core virtues. Wonder is one of them. And the reason why we spend so much time on wonder is this idea of preserving and cultivating the natural love of learning that students have. So all students, when they come in our doors in kindergarten, love to learn. They're excited about it. They want to know more. It's just natural to them, right? If you have a toddler, they say the same word over and over again. Why? It's because they genuinely want to know. And when they seek those things, it's enjoyable to them. They delight in that process. That's a natural human thing. We're meant to do that. The problem is we get into schools, and for some reason along the road, we get that kind of drowned out of us. I think even as parents, sometimes we probably go, it is because I said so, just leave me alone, right? Whatever it is, we don't allow these students to pursue this love, and they lose it eventually. Our goal is to keep that not because just we want them to love learning, that's a good thing in and of itself, but if they are going to truly seek what is true, they must first have this sense of awe and wonder. There's a quote by Plato that says that wonder is the beginning of all wisdom. And the reason he argued that is because if we are truly going to seek something and want to understand it, we must think that thing is worthy of our pursuit. And if something is going to be worthy of our pursuit, it's because it affects us somehow deeply within us, and we go, oh my goodness, but it's usually something we don't fully understand. And so there's this process for him. I'm awestruck by something wondrous. I see that it's worth me pursuing because I don't know it, but it's affected me, so I'm going to pursue this with everything that I have. And so if they're going to seek learning, if they're going to seek that, they must first be awestruck by things they do not understand, and then desire to seek that. And that's something that we're going to focus on. And I will tell you, if this is done well, and we're working as hard as we can to make sure we do this well, the students will delight in that process because it's a natural human thing for us to delight in that process. And if you don't believe me, go talk to a 3 or 4-year-old and you'll see that they delight in that process. So we have 2 different schools, and we break up things. We don't break up things as elementary, middle school, and high school. We have what we call grammar school and then upper school. Grammar school is kindergarten through 6th grade, and there's a particular emphasis in each of these sections of the school. The first emphasis that we see in grammar school is we're teaching them the foundations for both academic and personal success. We're teaching them both the skills and the habits necessary for them to continue in this weighty thing that we call education. And there's a particular emphasis on 2 things, numeracy and literacy, or maybe literacy and mathematics is another way that's commonly talked about. And the reason why is those are 2 fundamental things for us to learn. Okay, literacy makes a lot of sense, right? If you can't read, you can't study any of the other disciplines. Math gets thrown to the side a lot in a lot of schools, or it's viewed only for its vocational ability, right? Well, they have to know this if they want to be an engineer or something like that. We don't look at mathematics that way. We look at mathematics because if you study math really well, it teaches you how to think well. And so if you don't study mathematics in the foundational kind of stepping stones of math, in that progression, you won't learn how to logically think well. And so we hold up those as probably the 2 most important things that we do in our school. The only reason I say probably is there's one other piece that we really focus on, and that is we're trying to lay the foundation for your students to be good human beings and to teach them good character, and we do that through something called the moral imagination. We're trying to teach them, often through stories, how their world ought to be and how they ought to play a part in that. And so a short kind of introduction to this idea of the moral imagination, I'd love to talk to you guys more about it later, your imagination teaches you what could be, the moral imagination teaches you what should be. And that there's a lot we could get into that, but I'll just tell you there's a heavy emphasis on teaching of stories and good characters and virtuous characters and characters who fall to vice and are punished for it, or there's consequences. And so that's a really important part of that early portion of the grammar school. Once again, in the upper school, this is our 7th through 12th grade. The biggest shift you'll see practically in these grades is that they go from being taught by a generalist, so one teacher that teaches them the whole day, to now they're being taught by subject area experts. So when they're in their mathematics classes, they're taught by a mathematician. When they're in their science classes, they're taught by a scientist. Now, I think a lot of schools view a science teacher and a scientist different. We don't. I'm looking for people who have a strong understanding of the discipline, but who also love your kids And I'll talk about that when we talk about staff a little bit later. But they really don't focus on these things, again, for their vocational utility. A lot of times in high school, kids start getting tracked, right? I'm going to go on an engineering track. I'm going to go on a mathematics track. I'm going to go on a humanities track. We believe that there's certain things that all of these students need to pursue for their own sake. And then as they do that, they start to understand how these things are interconnected. And so we're trying to create really well-rounded human beings. And then their ability is later on, they can choose for themselves when they go to college what they want to pursue. I think a lot of schools pigeonhole kids into a specific track early on, and that's as early as 7th and 8th grade. And I don't know about you guys, but if you went back to 7th and 8th grade and you had to pick your vocation and pursue that the rest of your life, how many of you guys want to be stuck in that? I wouldn't. And most of the time, I guess for guys, it's like, what, we want to be in the NFL or NBA or MLB, and that doesn't happen for most of us. So we want them to have the ability to choose what they want to do with their life later on, vocationally, but then we also want them to understand that your life is not just about work. So they should pursue good things with their life that don't have to do with just making money. But we do live in a culture about chasing money often, and we want our kids to know that that's, again, if that's all we do for them, that we're not doing much for them. Now, what I will say is just because we don't focus on vocational utility or going to college is the only option, a lot of kids that go through this type of education do very well in getting to colleges, do very well at getting scholarships, and do very well at getting jobs. Because they are articulate, they're thoughtful, they're hardworking, and they think well and they can problem solve well. And so this doesn't take their ability to get a good vocation off the table. We just want more for them than that. We do have uniforms. Now, when we're asked about uniforms, often there's this twinge in people of saying, oh, you only have uniforms so that you can be elitist or you can look really high and mighty. That's not the point. The next step down, that yes, as a practical reason, it does remove a lot of distractions in the classroom. The kids dress the same, they look the same, there's not this ability for distraction to fall into there, but there's another higher element to that as well. Students who wear a uniform to school that is typically an elevated version of what they typically wear when they're sitting on the couch shows them that there's some reverence and seriousness to what they're doing, right? This is a weighty thing. This is a thing I should hold in reverence, and so I should wear something like that. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because we had a fun story. COVID with regulations, if you have a positive case in one section, we have to send a whole cohort home. And we had to do that once with our kindergarten class. And can you imagine doing remote learning with kindergartners? Our kindergarten teacher is a saint. But one of our kindergartners' brothers was still here, and so she came with her mom through Carline to get picked up at the end of the day. So she was at home doing remote learning, and when she rolled up on Wednesday with her mom, she was wearing her formal attire. She could have been wearing sweatpants. But why was she wearing formal attire? Her answer is, because that's what I wear to learn. And that's what we want our kids to understand, is that this is what you put on when you're going to do that, and there's a weightiness to that. And it's amazing how a kindergartner can even understand that. And not even being told as such, she just naturally kind of was inclined to that. We do hold a high emphasis of fine arts. We're not just an academic school. A good education sits on a kind of three-pronged approach. You need great academics, you need great arts, and you need great PE and athletics. And I'll talk about PE and athletics on the next slide, but why the fine arts? Why is this so important? Well, there's a lot of reasons. If you learn an instrument, there's a lot of discipline that goes into that. There's a ability of someone to learn a skill and learn it well, and that's a wonderful thing. The thing that we focus on, though, is you kind of hear the idea of the whole person being the body, the mind, and the soul. This is kind of the category we attribute to the soul a little bit. And bear with me for a second as I explain this. In fine arts, whether it's music, whether it's the visual arts, there's this ability to train and learn things like harmony, symmetry, decorum. Things have to be structured and ordered in a particular way. And if they're ordered in that particular way, things go well. If they're not, things fall apart. And so Plato kind of stated this in Book 3 of the Republic, but students who understand these things have the sharpest sense of what's been left out and what isn't a fine product of craft or what isn't a fine product of nature. Students who understand these things are able to recognize, whether it's in their ear, in an instrument, or on a piece of paper in the visual arts, what is as it should be and what isn't. But then that also allows them to see those things outside of the classroom as well and recognize those things. And that's a beautiful thing for kids to learn that, right? We're trying to attune their affections as well, not just their mind and their body. And so if they can recognize when something is not as it ought, they can work to remedy that, whether it's within themselves or the people around them. The other thing we love about the arts is it's probably one of the easiest ways for students to see beauty in our education. It's a really easy, tangible thing. If a choir gets up and sings this wonderful performance, you're moved inside. It's an easy, tangible thing for even young kids to recognize. And then if you have, the 7th grade band and they're playing notes all wrong, it's painful to us, right? It's a good thing for them to see. Athletics, first off, I'll say we don't have athletics yet. We are a K through 6 school. Even any of the athletics we would have done this year were canceled, sadly. Going into next year, though, in middle school and high school, we are going to be pushing for good, robust athletic programs. And not just because we want to keep kids in our school, and if we don't have sports, people won't come. There's a reason. Remember I talked about our mission and vision. One of the most important pieces about athletics or PE is it gives us an arena for students to practice virtue that they can't in the comfort of their classroom. Easy way to say this is it's very easy to be virtuous when you are comfortable. It's very difficult to be virtuous if you are uncomfortable or tired or the odds stack against you. So when I was explaining this to students in past years, I would say it's really virtuous. You can be really virtuous of not cheating on a test if you're the only one in the classroom. There's no temptation to veer away from that. It's really hard to be courageous when you're on the basketball court and you're looking across the court and the guy is a foot taller than you, stronger than you, and played basketball for much longer than you. It's much more difficult to be courageous in that situation. And so this arena to practice these virtues is unique. And so we really, really want to uphold those things as much as we can. I had to steal those athletic pictures from my last school I was at, so hopefully we'll have some new ones next year to put up there. Technology in the classroom. A lot of people look at classical schools and say they must be anti-technology. That is not true. We are not anti-technology. However, like everything, we believe that technology, the tool that it is, needs to be used prudently. I will tell you right now, in most schools that emphasize technology, they're not just spending a lot of money on this new technology that's coming out. What they're doing is they're flipping the roles of the teacher and the tools in the classroom. So one, that takes the teacher out of their primary role as the giver of information in the classroom, and it puts them on a backs role where they're just helping students facilitate the finding of information. That's a problem. Because if we and the only thing we do with technology is teach kids that they can just Google the answer to everything, do they own any of that information for themselves? Have they been taught how to think in any way, shape, or form? And we don't always know and control what they do when they use that technology or how it's used. And so what we view technology as is a tool that helps the teacher in the classroom. So we will have projectors. Our teachers have computers. I'm using technology right now as a tool. But the teacher should still be the primary giver of information in the classroom. The students shouldn't just be looking for information, but should be trying to think and process and own some of those things for themselves. So we're in no way, shape, or form anti-technology. I want to be clear about that. But we are trying to be very prudent when we use that. Because anytime you use a tool, you might be giving something up. And so we just have those conversations and we're thoughtful about that. So the question I get a lot on this is, will you never have kids on computers? I will tell you right now, in the younger grades, probably not. We will likely have some Chrome carts with some Chromebooks that kids, when they're older, doing a journalism class, absolutely. They'll probably use that as a tool. We're going to have a senior thesis for seniors to do. They'll probably do some of that in class on these laptops. But again, they're the tool for them to help or aid in the class, not the primary agent or giver of information, if that makes sense. The other piece I would like to point out about this, and I can't believe I forgot this last time I talked about it, and then I had someone ask me the question, cell phones. If students want to bring cell phones to school, they are turned off and in their backpack when they walk in the building, and then they can get back on them when they leave our property. We don't believe that cell phones have any place in the classroom, and a lot of schools that do that, let them get them out at lunch or recess. We don't like that. We want students sitting across from the table with each other, having a conversation. One of the biggest pet peeves in my last school is as soon as the last bell rang, kids could get on their phones. Do you know what the first thing they did as soon as the bell rang? Every single kid in my class for about 4 minutes. I don't want my kid to be addicted to those things, but so many of us are. And so we want to give these kids a haven away from technology, away from the screen time, and allow them to truly interact with human beings and human things, if that makes sense. I'll answer some more questions about that later because I'm sure you'll have them. The other thing we're really excited about is we're looking forward to the future. As a charter school, especially in a temporary location, it always feels a little bit like, are we going to be here permanently? We're very excited to announce that in the fall of 2021, which is this year, holy cow, thank you, we are going to be moving into a new facility that's being built for us. We are very excited. This is the 3D drawings of the design that has been done. This will be the eventual building of our grammar school, and then we're hoping to do a phase 2 build 3 to 4 years down the road. That'll be our eventual upper school as well. So this building that you see here will be our whole school for a while, and then when we grow out of it, we'll build another section. Where is it located? It's a question we get a lot. So if you went south on I-25 and turned left on 392, turn left on County Road 5. About a mile up the road, there's a plot, about 14 acres of land that we purchased, and we'll be building that on that property. So that's going to be our future home, and we're very, very excited about that. If you have any questions about that later, I'll be happy to answer those questions. But it's going to be great to be in a facility that is for our program, with our needs met, and for anyone that's talked to people in our school, this has been a great location for us, but we're needing more space. So we're really looking forward to that. The most important people in your kids' education are the teachers. I want to talk a little bit about them, and even though they're back there and can maybe listen to me, that's okay. They need some encouragement sometime. The staff, especially the faculty, are singularly the most important thing to consider when you're considering the success of a school. Enrollment's great, a nice building is great, but if you don't have great teachers who are going to be spending however many hours a day with your kids, they need to be great people. I didn't say great teacher. That can come later. What I look for when I hire someone is that they are great human beings first. Then I go, okay, are you a good teacher, or can I teach you to be a good teacher? I can't teach someone to be a good human being. Hopefully I can help your kids become that with your partnership and with the teacher's partnership. But I can't make somebody who I hire a better human being once I get them in the door. I can make them a better teacher. So I focus first on whether or not they're a good human being. And I'll tell you right now, the people that are out there right now are amazing human beings. My kids wandering around back there with all of them, I'm not even watching them. I trust them implicitly. So yes, that was free babysitting too, but that's neither here nor there. They're amazing human beings, and if you talk to any of our parents, which you'll get a chance to, hopefully. We have one parent that's here with us today, Mr. Easterhouse, if you can wave. He's going to be back, and he'll answer your questions from a parent perspective. But if you talk to our parents, they'll tell you that the teachers love their kids. And that's the number one thing I look for, is someone who's going to be a good human being and care for the kids, and then I look at what are your qualifications to teach. Because if they don't have the first thing, I don't even want to talk to them. And you can even talk to some of my staff. I ask some of the same questions in the interview that seem a little bit weird, because I talk to them more about who they are as a person before I even get to anything educationally. And I'll put them on the spot if you want to ask them that question later, because I'm very, very particular on that. But we're going to continue to be devoted on bringing in the best human beings that we can, because again, kids especially, I mean we as human beings in general are, but kids especially are going to mimic their models. And again, I'm thinking about my own kids hopefully coming through school. I want to make sure that they're going to be in classrooms with people that I want them to emulate. And that's what I look for in teachers. So our staff has done a fantastic job. What a year to start a new school and be a teacher in a new school in the middle of a pandemic, with kids from all different types of backgrounds, all different types of schools, and they have done a fantastic job. So I know they can hear me. So would you guys just indulge me a second? Would you guys give them a round of applause for how wonderful they've done this year? I can't tell you what a blessing they are. They're fantastic people, and my goal now is to let you have some time to not only get your questions answered, but I want you to meet our staff. I could stand up here and talk for hours and hours and hours, and you can ask my staff. I probably would if they let me, but I know you guys have a lot of questions.